Mariana Silva and her flawless smile hid a darkness no one could imagine. To the city, she was a rising social star, admired and untouchable. But behind the charm, detectives began to see a chilling trail of murders that suggested Mariana wasn't just a woman of beauty, she could be a calculated killer hiding in plain sight. In a bustling coastal city in Brazil, she was impossible to ignore. With striking features that seemed almost sculpted and a presence that drew attention effortlessly, she moved through life like someone born to be noticed. People on the streets would pause to look at her as she passed, and her smile had a way of lingering in the minds of those she encountered. Friends and acquaintances described her as charismatic, magnetic, and utterly captivating. There was a warmth in her demeanor that made strangers feel instantly comfortable, as though they had known her for years, even if their paths had crossed only briefly. She attended the city's social events with ease, mingling with influential figures and locals alike, always appearing poised and charming. Her life appeared enviable from the outside. She posted carefully curated photos on social media that showcased her as a model of beauty and sophistication, attending glamorous parties, walking along the beach at sunset, or enjoying high-end restaurants. Her followers admired her elegance and charisma, often leaving comments expressing fascination with her lifestyle. To the casual observer, she seemed to embody the ideal life, admired, attractive, and untouchable. Yet, as the police would come to suspect, appearances can be dangerously deceptive. For 2 years, the city had been haunted by a series of murders that seemed unconnected at first. For victims, each from different backgrounds, were found in circumstances that appeared random, yet shared a strange, almost ritualistic similarity. Investigators were puzzled by the precision with which the crimes were carried out, the care taken to stage each scene, and the lack of obvious motives or connections between the victims. These killings had left the city on edge, and the media had begun to speculate wildly, reporting everything from organized crime to supernatural theories. It wasn't until quietly reviewing evidence that detectives began noticing subtle threads linking the murders. A fleeting presence caught on CCTV, a perfume lingering near the scene, or a digital trail of interactions between the victims and a single individual, all signs that someone was moving deliberately, almost invisibly, through the city. Slowly, the woman who seemed untouchable and admired began to surface in police reports. At first, it was merely a name mentioned in passing, a vague association noted in case files. But as investigators re-examined timelines, locations, and witness statements, a pattern emerged that pointed toward her. Despite her public image as a model citizen, a growing number of small details began to suggest something darker beneath the surface. She appeared at locations near 2 of the crime scenes around the times the murders occurred, yet there was never anything overtly incriminating, just fragments that raised uneasy questions. Police analysts began to theorize that someone who knew how to command attention and mask their true intentions could use beauty and charm as a shield, moving through society while manipulating events in secret. Her life, once seen as enviable and untouchable, suddenly became a focal point of suspicion. The contrast between her radiant public persona and the dark implications emerging from the investigation created a sense of tension and unease. Residents who had once admired her now glanced warily, questioning the very nature of appearances. How could someone so celebrated and charming be linked, even indirectly, to a series of brutal crimes? The question hung over the city like a shadow, and the investigation was just beginning to peel back the layers of a story that was far more complicated and far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. As detectives continued to examine the evidence, a disturbing pattern began to emerge, one that suggested the murders were not random at all. Each victim, though different in age, background, and social circle, had connections to the city's nightlife and digital networks that went unnoticed at first. The first victim, a journalist known for her investigative work, had been pursuing a story about corruption in the local government. Her disappearance initially seemed unrelated to anyone in her personal life, but her notes and messages revealed encounters with individuals who appeared to know more than they admitted. The second victim, a nightclub owner, vanished shortly after attending a high-profile party. Security footage captured fleeting images of someone who seemed to observe the crowd intently, someone whose presence didn't raise alarms at the time. The third, a university student, was found near the beach at dawn, a location popular with early risers and joggers. Yet no one recalled seeing her in the hours leading up to her death, as if she had been deliberately guided to that isolated area. The fourth victim, a delivery worker, disappeared after a brief encounter in the city's busy market, an ordinary place transformed into a scene of mystery through meticulous planning. At first, investigators struggled to connect the dots. The victims had no obvious links, no shared enemies, and no clear pattern in their social or professional lives. Yet, as the investigation deepened, small coincidences began to stand out. Each murder involved a subtle staging, the positioning of the bodies, the choice of location, and even the timing of the deaths seemed deliberate. It was as if someone was leaving a signature without ever being seen, a calculated mark that only became apparent when all four incidents were examined together. Forensic teams noted peculiar consistencies, traces of the same chemical near two of the scenes, similar marks suggesting careful handling, and digital footprints that hinted at a manipulator lurking behind the facade of normalcy. The more detectives explored these links, the more unnerving the realization became. The same person appeared to be threading through each victim's life, sometimes tangentially, sometimes directly, but always leaving a trace that connected the events. Witness statements, once dismissed as inconsequential, were revisited with a new lens. A fleeting interaction in a cafe, a shared table at a nightclub, or even a coincidental photograph now took on a different weight. Analysts mapped out the movements of a woman whose presence, once considered incidental, now seemed to shadow the victim's last hours. This emerging pattern brought both excitement and frustration to the investigation. While the clues suggested a deliberate orchestration, they were also maddeningly subtle, offering glimpses without definitive proof. Police began to understand that they were dealing with someone extraordinarily cautious, someone capable of blending into the city's vibrant social scene while pulling the strings behind the scenes. Behavioral experts suggested that the perpetrator might be using beauty and charm as a tool, a way to manipulate situations without drawing suspicion. As these connections became clearer, the notion of coincidence gave way to a chilling possibility. The murders were not isolated events, but the work of a careful, calculating individual. The city that had once felt random and chaotic now seemed under the invisible control of someone who understood human behavior, timing, and perception. Each discovery raised more questions than answers, deepening the sense of unease. The idea that a single person could move through life unnoticed, orchestrating such devastating outcomes, created a tension that settled over both the investigators and the community. It was a pattern that demanded attention, a puzzle that, if solved, could finally reveal the disturbing truth behind the deaths that had left the city on edge for more than 2 years. Despite the growing suspicions surrounding her, the woman's public persona remained untarnished. She continued to move through society with effortless grace, attending social gatherings, charity events, and cultural celebrations that drew crowds from across the city. In every photograph, she appeared radiant, her smile bright and inviting, her posture poised and confident. Friends and acquaintances described her as warm and approachable, someone who could light up a room with little more than a glance. To the casual observer, there was nothing to suggest that she could be linked to anything sinister. She was, in many ways, the embodiment of charm and sophistication, a figure whose life seemed entirely out of reach for the ordinary citizen. Yet behind that carefully cultivated exterior, subtle inconsistencies began to appear, noticed only by the most meticulous investigators. Surveillance footage placed her in the vicinity of multiple crime scenes around the times of the murders, though never in a way that seemed suspicious to the public. A fleeting silhouette in the background of a security camera, a shadow glimpsed on a beach at dawn, a reflection in a shop window, all seemingly ordinary moments that gained significance only under close examination. Digital records revealed that she had interacted online with several of the victims, though these interactions appeared casual and harmless at first glance. It was the accumulation of these small details that began to shift the investigation from theory to suspicion. Forensic experts began to analyze the physical traces left behind. Tiny fibers on clothing found near one crime scene matched materials known to be part of her wardrobe. Fingerprints, faint but discernible, appeared in locations linked to two of the murders. Even her social media activity, initially considered innocuous, revealed patterns of presence and absence that aligned eerily with the timelines of the victims' last known movements. Each discovery added a new layer of complexity, suggesting a meticulous individual capable of manipulating environments and perceptions while maintaining an impeccable public image. The contrast between her outward charm and the mounting evidence of potential involvement created unease among both the public and the investigators. People who had once admired her beauty began to question what they truly knew about her. Friends who had welcomed her into their homes found themselves replaying past encounters, searching for signs they might have missed. The media seized on the narrative, dubbing her the beautiful killer in headlines that spread rapidly across social networks. Rumors and speculation flourished, yet no one had concrete proof, leaving an atmosphere of tension and fear in its wake. Analysts studying the cases noted a chilling level of precision in the murders, suggesting that whoever orchestrated them understood not only the victims' routines but also the psychology of perception. Someone who could charm, distract, and manipulate simultaneously, all while avoiding detection, would be extraordinarily dangerous. Her ability to maintain a facade of normalcy, to blend into the city's social fabric, and to continue a seemingly ordinary life while being linked to extraordinary violence made her a figure of both fascination and dread. As investigators dug deeper into her past and scrutinized every interaction, it became clear that they were dealing with a person who had mastered the art of duality. Outwardly admired, privately calculating, she occupied two worlds simultaneously, one that dazzled and charmed, another that whispered of control and darkness. The city remained unaware of the full extent of the connections being uncovered, yet the shadow of suspicion had begun to stretch across every corner of her life. With every small revelation, the picture grew sharper. This was no ordinary suspect. She was someone who could operate undetected, someone whose outward beauty masked a potentially deadly intelligence, and someone who may have been orchestrating events in a manner that was both deliberate and terrifying. As the investigation intensified, police officers found themselves in a tense race against time. Every lead seemed to twist and turn, offering glimpses of the truth that vanished almost as quickly as they appeared. Surveillance teams were deployed across the city, monitoring locations linked to the victims and following anyone connected to the suspect. Yet, despite hours of observation, the woman moved through the urban landscape with an ease that frustrated the authorities. Her ability to blend into crowds, to appear as nothing more than a passerby, left investigators questioning how someone could be so meticulous and yet so ordinary in appearance. The city's residents, meanwhile, grew increasingly aware of the ongoing hunt. Social media became a hub of speculation and rumors as citizens shared sightings, theories, and unverified stories about her movements. The combination of fear and fascination created a tense atmosphere, with everyone wondering if someone admired for their charm could also harbor such deadly intent. While authorities kept much of their progress confidential, the public perception of the case was that of a glamorous predator moving undetected in plain sight. Detectives focused on mapping her movements more precisely, combining physical surveillance with digital analysis. By cross-referencing CCTV footage from multiple districts, they could trace patterns in her daily routines. Each sighting, while seemingly mundane, a morning coffee at a local cafe, an evening stroll along the boardwalk, began to align with the timelines of the murders. Forensic specialists worked tirelessly to examine minor details, such as fingerprints found at unrelated locations, faint traces of fibers, and subtle anomalies in digital logs. All the pieces seemed to converge, painting a picture of someone extraordinarily careful, yet audacious enough to navigate the city without drawing attention. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A street vendor who had observed her habits over several months provided a crucial detail. He had noticed her visiting certain neighborhoods and then vanishing for hours, sometimes coinciding with events connected to the victims. Investigators quickly re-examined surveillance footage, confirming that her presence near key locations was not coincidental. It suggested deliberate movement and awareness of her surroundings that went far beyond casual interaction. Behavioral analysts began to theorize about her methods, someone who understood human behavior deeply, someone who could manipulate perception to remain invisible while orchestrating events around her. The implications of these findings sent shockwaves through the investigation. What initially seemed like a series of random murders now appeared as the work of a calculating individual, someone who understood timing, influence, and the power of appearances. Police began coordinating more extensive operations, placing teams strategically to monitor potential targets and track her movements. The tension between the need for caution and the urgency to act created an atmosphere of high stakes within the department. As the hunt continued, the woman's public persona remained untouched. She continued to attend social events, interact with friends and acquaintances, and maintain the appearance of normalcy. Yet every calculated step she took, every minor oversight or subtle trace she left behind, brought investigators closer to uncovering a truth that was as shocking as it was dangerous. The city was caught in a delicate balance between everyday life and the realization that someone who seemed so familiar and admired could simultaneously be linked to acts of extraordinary darkness. Every new observation, every painstakingly analyzed detail reinforced a growing certainty. The suspect was intelligent, meticulous, and capable of navigating to worlds at once the visible, admired world and the hidden, potentially deadly one. The investigation reached a critical point when digital forensic experts uncovered encrypted messages on a private device that had long eluded detection. The content was chilling in its precision and cold calculation. The messages revealed a meticulous fascination with control and observation, documenting interactions with people who would later become victims. Every detail, from their routines to their vulnerabilities, appeared to have been noted and analyzed. It suggested a level of premeditation that was both methodical and deeply unsettling. Investigators realized they were dealing with someone who approached the murders with the same careful planning one might apply to a complex puzzle, leaving clues only to manipulate perception and confuse those who sought the truth. Authorities moved carefully, aware that any misstep could allow the suspect to disappear again. Surveillance intensified, digital communications were monitored, and forensics teams worked tirelessly to match the data from the messages to physical evidence collected at the crime scenes. The correlation between the encrypted logs and the murders became increasingly clear. Analysts noticed patterns in the timing, location, and victim selection that mirrored entries in her personal records. The precision was horrifying. It was as though each step had been orchestrated to maintain invisibility while executing a sinister plan. Public interest exploded as details began to emerge. News outlets ran stories that painted her as both alluring and dangerous, the beautiful killer whose charm masked an almost unfathomable capacity for violence. Social media was flooded with speculation, and the city became gripped by a mix of fear and fascination. Yet for law enforcement, the priority remained gathering indisputable proof. The device provided insight into her mindset, revealing not only a desire for control but also an almost obsessive attention to how events would be perceived by others. Each victim was chosen deliberately, and every act was calculated to leave a signature that was both subtle and disturbing. Despite mounting evidence, the authorities exercised caution. Arresting someone without irrefutable proof could jeopardize the case and allow her to manipulate the narrative in ways that might obscure her guilt. Teams analyzed every interaction, retraced every movement, and scrutinized every digital trace. The complexity of her behavior suggested that she was operating several steps ahead, anticipating reactions and planning contingencies. Behavioral analysts emphasized that the combination of charm, intelligence, and meticulous planning made her extraordinarily dangerous, someone capable of hiding in plain sight while orchestrating a trail of destruction. The city remained tense, aware that the person they had admired for so long could be linked to unspeakable acts. The revelations forced residents to question the reliability of appearances, the depth of human deception, and the frightening possibility that someone they thought they knew could conceal such darkness. Investigators continued piecing together the puzzle, aware that each new discovery brought them closer to understanding the full scope of her actions, but also to confronting the unnerving reality of a mind that had been operating with lethal precision all along. The case left a lingering question over the city: how can beauty and charm coexist with calculated cruelty, and could anyone ever truly see the darkness hidden behind a familiar face?